YouTube, hello, and no, nothing's wrong with me. I know what you're thinking. You saw the title of this video. I can't believe I'm doing this one either. Defending NHL officials. What? Doesn't that go against being a hockey fan, a hockey broadcaster, a player? I mean, anyone who's been around this game long enough knows that there's usually plenty of room to be critical about NHL officiating. But I'm here today to defend them and actually defend one individual specifically, Tim Peel, who got fired today by the NHL. There are worse things than makeup calls. That's what he got fired for. Essentially admitting the fact that he was trying to compensate for a previous bad decision and bad call in the moment. So let's just dive into this. First off, I don't expect you to know every single official in the league, but if you've watched hockey long enough, you know all the common names, you know the faces that have been around forever, and Tim Peel is one of them. He's 53 years old. He's been around this league since 1999. He's officiated more than 1,300 NHL games in the regular season, 90 playoff games during that span, so he's a trusted individual. You don't get to do the playoffs if you're not critiqued in a positive way. He's done 2 Winter Classics, which are obviously viewed as pinnacle and staple events. So he's been chosen to that. Not to mention, separately, he was part of the 2014 Olympics. And there's also this for Tim Peel. He was retiring at the end of this season anyway. So let me just make a comment on that. That kind of unfortunately clouds and taints all of this when you think about the fact that maybe he was just being more open this year. Maybe what he said, he was just being more honest because he figures I'm out of here anyway. But also, here's a guy who committed to officiating in this league during a pandemic. I'm not saying you necessarily owe him something if you're the league, but here's a guy who is committed as anybody else to making sure this sport and this game continued on. And you usher him out about halfway through what was going to be his final season. He didn't get to have his ceremonial last game. Turns out his last game is going to be a conversation starter for years for him and everybody else to come. So that part is unfortunate for Tim Peel. So what got him fired? And just in case you don't know, I'm assuming you do. It's the world of social media. You've probably seen and heard the clip. I'd play it here, except I don't want to get tagged for a copyright violation by the NHL. They love to do that. And even if it's a conversation piece, I'm not here to benefit off it. I want to talk about it. My video will get tagged. That's unfortunate. Long story short, let me get back to the subject here. They were going to break on the Nashville and Detroit broadcast. And this is so unfortunate, right? Because his mic was on, the one he uses to announce the penalties to the stadium and the PA system. Somebody was asking him about a call. He goes, it wasn't much, but I wanted to get a bleeping penalty against Nashville early. To summarize, this was an admission of attempting to neutralize the game and a previous questionable call on this night, right? This happens all the time. He's balancing the flow of the game. He felt like one team got cheated early and it was a mistake, and you have to make these calls split second, heat of the moment. No second chances. We get second chances on replays and broadcasts, slow-mo, high def, all that stuff. We get every advantage. They have to do this in real time. Yes, they do get a front row seat. Yes, this is their job. They're supposed to be great at it, but I'm not saying it's easy. So that comment that was caught on television by everybody, that clip's out there, that's the one that stirred up the controversy, the conversation, ultimately got him fired. But let's be very clear about what this was, because I feel like in seeing the reaction of others, there is a little bit of a discrepancy here in terms of what people are seeing and what they're realizing actually happened. This was compensation in the genuine interest of fairness to a single game. He personally, and I don't know if this resonates with the other 3 on-ice officials, but at least he alone, if not all of them, were trying to make up for something that happened earlier in the night. Right? They're doing this in the interest of fairness. What this was not is one official, and how do I know it was not? Because you watch the clip. You can hear it, but you can read into the body language, even though you can't see it. You can read into the tone of the voice, the way it was said, the way this comment was delivered. This was not an official trying to entirely dictate the outcome of the game based on calls. This isn't, hey, I'm going to call all for Nashville tonight so that, or all against Detroit so that Nashville can win this game. This is not a fixed game situation. This is trying to correct a game, not trying to fix the entire result of the game. But again, I want to make that clear because I'm not sure everybody is understanding the context of what was said, how it was said, and what was actually going on in that moment. So the NHL, look, once they hear this, they can't have, it's a red flag, they can't have this kind of controversy stirring around. I'm sure you've already seen this comment, this statement, 2 paragraphs, and I think the critical parts are the very last sentence of the first paragraph and the very beginning of the second paragraph. Tim will, quote, no longer be working NHL games now or in the future. That's more than we're firing you. That is, we're banishing you. That's what that is. And then the first sentence of the second paragraph, nothing is more important than ensuring the integrity of our game. So I get it. I get where the league is coming from. And in a second, I'll break down their perspective on this too. It is important. I'm not saying I agree with it. I think it was more something they had to do. I'm not saying they even wanted to do this. Why would you want to be in the middle of this? We'll get to them in a second. Let's go back to makeup calls. Makeup calls have been a part of all sports ever since there was an umpire, referee, official, anybody who makes decisions on the game and how it's being conducted. There have always been the human element of makeup calls. That's point number 1. Baseball, strike or not. Basketball, foul or not. I think football, actually, of all sports, might have the fewest referee and official-based controversies. Not sure if that's a fair statement or not. It's just my gut instinct right off the bat. And maybe it's because there's so many plays in basketball where did he foul him or not? You know, it's not obvious. I feel like football penalties are more obvious. Like that was pass interference or that team jumped offside. Like it's very clear. It's more clear in football, whereas penalties in hockey kind of arbitrary at times, and we'll get to that in a second too. Makeup calls number 2 are magnified in this era of high definition, big long zoom lenses, slow-mo cameras, and widespread stats for every cup. How many hooking penalties player X or how many slashing penalties player Y has taken this year, has taken lately. I can see all the trends that were not available in previous times. Okay? So everybody's way more aware of what's being called and what's not these days than ever before. And then last but not least, makeup calls are the human element of the game that fans think they're not attracted to, but they are. If this was all robotic and it was all procedural and every single call was made every single time, number 1, you'd never be able to finish a game. I'm not sure, though, that you'd like it. This is the human element of why you watch. If we just lined up 2 teams and said, well, this roster's better, they win tonight. You don't even actually have to play the game. Like, let the computer just simulate it and you're done. What? You're watching for the unexpected. These calls are part of the unexpected. There you go. Let's move on to things that you believe or not now. Do you believe this was the first time a comment like this by an official was ever made? And he just got caught the first time it ever happened. And number 2, the first time he ever said it, his mic just happened to be on. And I you know, as part of a television production crew, I feel bad for them. Somebody was at the controls of a fader just like this. And all you kind of had to do was slide that fader down, just like I'm doing right there. And you wouldn't hear the microphone. Instead, it was up at an accidental time. He also has a clicker to have it on and off, so he made a mistake too. This was not just the audio person's fault. There's multiple ways that this could have been caught. And I can't stress enough how many times there have been close calls in broadcasts, and I'll use myself as the example, not to throw anybody under the bus. Open mic, you have to assume it's always hot. And if you're an official always wearing a mic, you don't know where that feed is going unless your mic and your battery is like off. So you really have to be careful. And I'm not saying be a bad person, be a jerk, and have the on-off switch, that's what the public sees. I'm saying just know that a hot mic is always possible, and certain things that not everybody's going to agree with can be caught. So, yeah, not the first time this has ever been said. It's one of the rare times it was ever caught on a broadcast, but do you also believe that all 36 skaters on the ice weren't aware of this conversation? Like, didn't 10 people alone probably just hear him yelling this to another player? Or didn't the player who heard this, who he was talking to, go on and share that with the rest of his team? And this happens all the time. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying it was necessarily right, but it happens all the time. And there's much worse things than makeup calls. Let me go through 3 that pop right off the top of my head. How about the regular season versus playoff unwritten rules? Like, yeah, we're not calling penalties tonight because this is the playoffs. We don't want the game to be decided on penalties. Wait, what? Or in the third period of a playoff game, especially, we're putting the whistles away. What? You played 82 games of a regular season one way. And now you're going to go away from the rulebook entirely because, wait, you want to take yourself out of the officiating conversation? You want to take yourself out of the equation? You're putting yourself more in the equation by changing the rules midstream at the most important part of the season. So that's worse to me than makeup calls in a single game, is changing regular versus playoff season rules. Number 2, leaving situation room officials anonymous. What I'm talking about here is when a play goes to review, when Toronto looks at it, do you know the names of the officials in the situation room on that given night? Do you have any accountability for the individual who is deciding the outcome of a penalty, of an offside challenge, of a coach's challenge? Was it a goal or not? No, they safeguard these people, and they're NHL officials, but they don't put a name to it. They don't make it very clear who's making the decision and also necessarily how the decision is made. They provide some information to us in the media. They tell us not to copy and paste it, share it in our own words. Why can't they just come out and say, here's what we saw. We're going to make this statement and this announcement. The technology is there for a real human being to be in the situation room, put them on camera, just like a ref, put their mic on and say, here's what I saw. Here's my ruling. Let's continue the game. And then last, but certainly not least, you know what's worse than makeup calls in a single game is the complete inconsistency of the league and officiating and the Department of Player Safety on illegal hits, on suspensions and lengths and fines versus suspensions versus nothing. All those things, bodily contact, and also I'm going to throw in goalie interference, which is a totally, separate controversy and a rule that's not really well defined. It's hard to define it. So many different ways that rule can be enforced and challenged and tested. So I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying goalie interference and illegal hits are 2 things that, my goodness, right now, that's a much bigger problem than makeup calls in any single game. Let's move on. Now, I have heard some interesting perspectives to consider on all this and the officiating is that I kind of agree that erasing one bad call with another in a game doesn't make anything better. Like, you made your mistake, that's fine. Move on, live with it, and have the game be that human element. That's not a bad point. I honestly, I'm trying to see both sides here. But I think the counterpoint to that one is another comment, and I put quotes here. These are kind of paraphrasing things I saw on social today. How about the fact that 38 players are on the ice every single game, and all of them are trying to gain every last single advantage they have, whether it's cheating or not, whether it's crossing the line or just coming up to the line or towing the line of what's a penalty and what's not. And that's the other thing here is nobody with these makeup calls, it's not like the official is, saying, hey, you, 2 minutes for breathing, get in the box. They're not making up these penalties. Yes, they might be exaggerating whether they're called or not, but the players on the ice are constantly doing things that if you called every single penalty in a game, would you watch that? I don't think you would. Would that game ever end, by the way? Would it be a 4-hour, 5-hour game if every single infraction was called? Or would players from both sides play it totally differently and you wouldn't like the game as much anymore? It'd be a 12-10 game probably because you don't want to make any contact. You don't want to use your stick for anything handling the puck. No more poke checks. What do players think about this? Enough from me. I'm just a casual observer. I try and immerse myself in all this. But Jason Demers, friend of the program. Wait, what program am I talking about? I like Jason. Great guy with the Sharks. Happy to see him continue a long NHL career. I hope it keeps on going for him with the Desert Dogs. But I chose his tweet today because I thought it was right on the money. And it's also enhanced, like I said, because I know and respect his opinions. He said, I always liked Tim Peel. There's a flow in NHL games that refs have to manage that might be tough to notice. They're human, they make mistakes, and sometimes they get caught up in keeping that flow. Might be excessive. Now, he was retweeting the NHL announcing that they were letting Tim Peel go. That's what he's saying might be excessive. To let him go? Might be. He's got a great point there. He's got a couple great points. The flow of the game being managed. That's what makeup calls are about. And if you make two bad calls one way, that's why you want to make one to correct it sooner than later so that you're not in debt. Somebody else on Twitter said, same thing earlier. Why would you correct one bad call with another? Well, if you don't take care of your debt, it might mount even greater on accident. And now you're really in trouble. You're really going to get criticized. So I love the JD tweet there. The NHL's perspective on all this. Again, trying to see all sides. What else were they supposed to do? Let me just make this face for the for the screenshot. I don't know. I mean, they had to send a message. This happened. Everybody saw it. It was on social media. Again, I don't think they wanted to have this outcome. They have to establish a precedent. If this goes on and they do nothing, they don't even, acknowledge it, they had to. So I agree with JD. Could have acknowledged it without maybe firing Tim Peel, banishing Tim Peel. Let's call it what it is, banishing Tim Peel. And number 3, you got to keep your stakeholders happy, whether that's fans, teams, sponsors, anybody who could be critical of, is the NHL really calling bad penalties on purpose to make things fair and even? It doesn't sit well with some people who don't get it. The broader audience, it doesn't sit well with. The more intellectual audience, and what I'm trying to explain to you here is so you'll see it more, you'll see it better, and you'll understand why this is not uncommon, it's not a big deal. So what comes next? That's how we're going to conclude this video. What NHL official from here on out is going to want to wear a microphone? What player is going to want to wear a microphone? Fans love access. I love access as a broadcaster. Now, they might be mic'd up in a taped situation, right, where we record the game and then we edit it up. We make sure nothing controversial like this comes out. Criticizing a teammate, criticizing an opponent, criticizing the league, whatever. Curse words. What official, they have to wear the mic to make these PA calls. What official is going to want to do this now? Kind of changes that game. Referees, and look, they have to communicate on the ice. They have to talk honestly with each other. Did we get this right? Did we get this wrong? What if this gets caught on audio? Number 2, my second thought here of what comes next. Now you've got referees who are already up against it with fans and players. And now do they have to satisfy the league also? Like the league's going to be counting their penalties? It's really tough. And then last but not least here is, are we going to get to the point where technology just takes over? Like we're going to have, we're already tracking pucks on the ice and players and how fast they're skating. Are we going to track physical contact and say, oh, the sensors went off, that's a penalty? And we know that player X was wearing this sensor, and player X is usually, a guy who cross-checks or spears or slashes more than most. That's pretty detailed technology, but are we that far off from it? You tell me. And I hope, I'm not suggesting that I hope that comes next. I'm just saying at this point, that's kind of where we are right now. So hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think either in the live chat if you're still here right now, or the comments section below if you're watching at a later point. And yeah, don't forget to hit me up on Twitter, the Gram. And please, if you've watched this long and you're not subscribing to the channel, maybe thumbs up at least, or hit me with a sub. That'd be pretty awesome. All right, until next time, everybody, be safe, and I will see you next time right here on YouTube. Bye-bye.